All right, well, welcome. Today we're talking about Drupal and Godot. For those of you who don't know me, I am JD. I also work for Hero Devs. If you're not familiar with Hero Devs, we're essentially a one-up for your open source software. So basically what we do is we keep open source software that's past end of life alive. One of our products is Drupal 7. That's what I work on primarily. But we also have a lot of other open source stuff. More than happy to talk about it if anybody has any questions about that, but we're not here to talk about that yet. We're going to go through a tutorial. If I can get past my level here. All right, tutorial's over. Everybody got that? Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm JD. I'm senior software engineer at Hero Devs. We just talked about them. I'm on the Drupal Community Working Group Conflict Resolution Team. Been doing Drupal for over 10 years. I used to be a paramedic before I did all this. I've been doing some form of coding since the 80s. I also stream on Twitch occasionally. So that's me. I'm going to give you all a chance to run away in case you walked into the wrong room. So we're going to talk about what is Godot, why connect it to Drupal, what's the advantage there, how to connect the two, a couple of use cases. I'm going to attempt a live demo. Everybody cross fingers when we get to that point. And if we have time, Q&A. First off, what is Godot? Does anybody not know what it is? Okay, and it's fine. So Godot is a free and open source game engine. It was introduced in 2007. And it runs on its own language, GD script, which is very similar to Python, or you can use C# to make games with it. I love it because it's free and open source, much like Drupal. That's kind of what attracted me to that, as opposed to, say, Unity or Unreal. So, like I said, it's free and open source. It has 2D, 3D capabilities for PC, mobile, web, and console. It's extremely customizable through community add-ons. Maybe that sounds familiar, like Drupal modules. Node-based architecture, maybe that sounds familiar, like Drupal nodes. It's got pretty straightforward API integration, and it's pronounced Godot. Godot. Anything else is wrong. I don't care what anybody else says. It's based on Waiting for Godot, the Samuel Beckett play. Because you're always going to be waiting for the feature that you want, because there's only so much they can stuff into it. So, what is Drupal? Well, if you have to ask, you might be at the wrong event, but you're still welcome here. Drupal, free and open source content management system built in PHP. So why connect the two? What was I thinking by trying to connect them? I wasn't, but I thought it would be fun. Because Drupal backend is great for housing content. You can use Drupal for authentication. Drupal can house level data, assets, interaction data, etc., dialogue, sprites, images, all kinds of stuff. Godot can run HTTP requests to get data from the CMS. I'm using JSON API in most of what I do, but there's REST API, GraphQL as well. Godot can update in-game content in real time by pinging the Drupal site or where the content and the data lives. All right, there was going to be a boss fight here, but I saved it for later. All right, so now we're going to talk about how we can integrate the two. Well, this is where things get a little bit exciting. Drupal has JSON API. Drupal has a REST API, has GraphQL. We're going to primarily focus on JSON API because it's included in Drupal core and follows the established standards. Each of these has its own use cases, but I like JSON API, so that's what I used. Now, Godot has several ways to ingest content from an external source through HTTP requests, using WebSocket connections, which I do a lot of stuff, not demoed here, but it's really fun, some of the things you can do. Godot can have its own webhooks or HTTP server. But we're mostly going to be talking about HTTP requests because I didn't realize I could do that. Sorry. But we're mostly going to be talking about JSON API. So what's one thing that you need to consider when doing any kind of integration, HTTP request across the internet? That's an open question.
Security.
Yeah. Security is crucial when connecting your game to an external service. We're briefly going to touch on it, but that's an entire session by itself. OAuth 2 is great for user-specific content. API keys work great for general game-to-server communications. And custom tokens also offer maximum flexibility as well. So security is a concern, and it's not easy, just like getting up to the... Oh, I did it. Getting up to the top level there. So the boss is on break, but the authentication system you choose will significantly impact the difficulty of building out your app. Type of app you're building might impact the authentication you need. You don't want to do too little, but it's very easy to do too much. Now, how are we actually going to implement this stuff? Well, let's start with Drupal. What do we need to do? Well, enable JSON API, create a content type for Godot to use, add contrib modules as, did I just say mutuals? Contrib modules as needed, set up the security on authentication, and add some content. So let's get into that a little bit. That little guy take a break here. And here we go. So I've created a couple of different content types here. We're only going to focus on the questions one for the demo here. But basically, we could have an answer, question, and a category in case you wanted to do something like a Jeopardy game and have everything divided out by categories. As far as some of the modules that we use, a lot of JSON API. JSON API defaults builds on JSON API, and it allows you to set what default comes through with the request. I don't know, has anybody not used JSON API for requests? Okay, so if you call to get information on a node on JSON API, and that node has a reference to an image, a media entity, what do you get back? Usually just a URL to that referenced entity instead of the image itself. JSON API defaults allows you to set so that the image itself can be part of that initial call. And let's see, I believe that I might have.
Is that different than includes, or is it like default? Can you default includes?
I think there was a reason I chose one over the other. I have them both enabled. And actually that might be, I might have gotten them confused slightly. So thanks for calling that out. I think this is part of defaults.
Okay.
I believe, but it could be wrong because it says default include.
Yeah. I
So-
don't remember either. I
Yeah. So it's one of these two. I should, for the next time, disable whichever one it isn't. But like for one of the examples I've done before is the sprite sheet and changing that out to get a different color sprite sheet or different character. So instead of having to call the node itself, then get the information back, then call the media image, and then get the image back from there, just add this into the default include list. And let's see, this was node sprite. So here, can you see that at all, or let's just...
Yeah.
So ordinarily it would be the link self here, but instead, as we go all the way down, it gives the information right as part of it, as part of the field media image. And I think that's a lot better. Fewer requests is better.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that I highly recommend. If you do anything like this, or even if you're just doing a headless or decoupled, highly recommend whichever one of the two it ends up being. All right, any questions on the setup of the Drupal side so far? Okay. Then and even in my notes here, I have JSON API default / include because I. So in Godot, we need to set up our. Oh wow. Okay. We need to set up our HTTP request, and to handle the JSON parsing. So find a way to parse the data from Drupal. Got to make sure that connection is secure. And we have to figure out a way to pull for new data from Drupal. So, time for another break to look at Godot. Has anybody said only one person was unfamiliar with what Godot is, but has anybody actually used the UI? Is this a little bit? Okay. Yep. All right, so Godot runs in GDScript is the language that it uses, or one of the languages. You can use C++ or C#. You can also use C++. Nope, not that. I use GDScript because it feels very Pythonic, which is a lot like, it feels very familiar compared to PHP, at least in my opinion. So what we do is we create our own HTTP getter and set the data to say where we want to pull in data from, which is what we've got here. We're going to focus primarily on question answer things like for Jeopardy or any kind of trivia game, but we can get a list of different sprites, we can get a sprites file, or we can add in basically whatever you want in here that you could pull from Godot. We also need to parse the JSON data. Then once that's parsed, we need to do something with it. So once we get that, we emit a signal. So in Godot, there's a concept of signals. It's very similar to props versus state in React, if anybody does anything in React world, where props can go down the chain. State is something that you pop back up. You change state kind of to signal a change. In Godot, it's just called signals. Can that actually be read? I can't see from this angle.
I can.
Yeah. So set the name of the signal, say that when something happens here, then we emit it with the with whatever's coming back. For the question data, it's going to be just the data so that we can parse it in someplace. For an image, it's going to be the image texture, and then that just sends out like a WebSocket event within Godot. Boom, we have this data, who wants it, and what do you want to do with it? Any questions on this setup? I know I kind of just skimmed over a lot of what goes into Godot, but this is a very, very high level.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Where do these scripts live in like the repo? Is there any specific place? Because I imagine that this is all bundled with, your Drupal site.
The GD script, the Godot,
Yeah.
they are two separate entities, two completely separate entities. Godot makes its own game, which you can export as a web application or an executable, or even for console if you fancy, and have the money to pay for the licensing for consoles, which I don't, because it's not cheap. But yeah, they're completely separate. And a little bit later, I'll show you kind of how the two things really interact. But yeah, good question. Anything else before? All right. All right, here's the boss went for milk. Let's just keep moving. All right, we've looked at some theory behind it. What about some practical applications? Well, like I've been saying, hang on. Okay, sorry. I didn't know that it did that. It's like the turbo button on old consoles. So the obvious example is a trivia game. Now, let's see where I've got that. Now, because of some of the odd limitations here between DDEV and local hosting and blah blah, I do have to do a little bit of setup here for it to work. And I don't know which side things are, I don't want to say broken on, but if I use the DDEV URL, then it doesn't work, maybe because it's redirecting to localhost. So I do have ngrok set up here. Now, all right, first thing, let's pull a question. Why are you doing this to me? Yay for live demos.
Yeah.
Oh, no, URL scheme? What? Oh, I have a space in front. Sorry. There we go. So what's the best Drupal camp? Well, I gave this talk last time in, the last camp I gave this talk was in Florida, so let's see what it says. No, bad.
Well, maybe.
Nope, it's wrong.
Oh.
I need to fix this, very, very much so. So, we go into content, best camp, edit that. Okay, we saved it. Let's go back here. All right, we got that fixed. Just by editing in Drupal. You can clap now. That should be pretty. Okay, so that's one example. Another example, I think the last time I gave this was right after, it was at DrupalCon, so I don't know if I have a sprite to update, but oh yeah, there we go. Just a randomly colored me here. I didn't do the animations because there are a lot of frames to go through to do all that. So yeah, we can change sprites around too. We can change the images. Say for a holiday special, you want to have a special skin go out for holidays, instead of having to do a Steam update, just boom, ping the Drupal site, and you have the new image. All right, so how do we do that? Oh, come on. Oh, okay. We stored the questions and answers in the CMS. We allowed for rapid updating of questions by going in, changing the data in Drupal. And if we wanted to, we could sort the questions by category and then change it in the Godot side to filter by the categories that are available. That was a little bit, I did try that out, but I didn't want to go through making 1,000 questions in different categories. And then we use Godot to pull in questions as needed via JSON API. Now, a leaderboard. This is one that I think was a lot of fun. I hope that I changed the next slide. Okay, I didn't put the animation on it. It should be there. So, let me do a couple of quick things here, and then I'm going to need all your help testing it. Oh, wait. Alright, let me make sure this works before I say we should all test it out. Excellent. Yeah, so feel free to scan this and play a quick game. It's going to ask for a name and a username. You don't have to, just put whatever you want to in there. And if you have any questions on how to play, oh, did everybody get that?
Yes.
Okay. Is it not? Okay, there it goes. Is it loading for everybody? It might be slow because it's coming straight from this laptop over in Grok, but
I think my keyboard isn't popping up. I'm trying to enter my name, but that might just be me.
Still loading for me. Yeah.
sorry, I didn't. We used this game for a conference a couple of weeks ago, and we had an opt-in and an email collection. I tried to pull all that overly personal stuff back out.
There we go.
So, since you're playing on mobile devices, tap or left click to clear a tile, long press or right click to flag a tile, 2-finger swipe or middle mouse if you have it to pan around the board. And what game is this? CVE Sweeper. It's not Minesweeper, CVE Sweeper. And you're looking for CVEs because Hero Devs, we do security.
Yeah, I also can't get the keyboard to show up.
Are you on iOS or Android? Okay. Well, then I'll just show it myself, the one that I have live does request an email, and I don't want to collect that because it goes to my own Drupal site that I cleared out as soon as the conference was over. So I'll just demo it here. All right, whoops, I lost. Got a score of 9,500 with 2 correct flags. So this is how I did the scoring on it. However many tiles you cleared, how many flags correct. If you did incorrect, you lost. So that was 9,500, right? Or 9,550. Ooh.
I opened it up in the Chrome browser instead of DuckDuckGo browser, and it is popping up.
Okay, then that's probably, I didn't take DuckDuckGo into account. I'm sorry. I don't value your privacy that much. Ah. All right, so 8250. Now, if I go to hero.devs.itch, completely separate application.
Thai food, who was that? Very good.
Good job. So, leaderboard. You're playing one game, all the data is going to Drupal, and then this leaderboard, when there are more entries on it, wait. See, and this is what I have here, and it's all blocked off from the public. But so the content types are leaderboard users. We have email, opted in. I just checked that because I'm not collecting any data. I can't say that enough. No personal data collected that I'm not going to delete immediately. Scores. Everything gets sent into Drupal from Godot. And then when the leaderboard comes up, everything gets pulled out of Drupal from Godot, or to Godot using a JSON API views module that I cobbled together to make sure that I could get the data out. It still needs work, otherwise I'd put it up on Drupal.org, but it needs a lot of work. It's very, very specifically set to this. Now, if we were to do 50 here. Then it pulls all those out pretty quickly too. So we used this at a conference a couple weeks ago and had it set up at the booth where people could go to the URL, play Minesweeper or CVE Sweeper, and then see their name on the leaderboard, the top, I think, 3 or 5 won prizes at the end of the event. Turned out really well. Everybody loved it. It was a lot of fun. So, what is going on in the back end here? I'm going to stop that so it doesn't keep going. Well, I have everything set up on a DigitalOcean droplet. If I could find the right IDE here. So the Drupal site here, I'm sorry that it's small, it's much gooder. What I would like to do is be able to put this whole setup into a recipe. I haven't had the time to really get into that, but I think it would be really cool, even as some kind of decoupled starter, just to have everything available that way. So we've got that for, don't need that, using Nginx as a server, and then I have some middleware happening using Express.js as a level of security. So from Godot to this Express app, there is hash and salt and crypto function in Godot that I enter in a ticket or a token in Godot. It encodes it or encrypts it, sends it to the Node.js, which decrypts, makes sure they match, and then the communication between Drupal and Godot happens in between or with this middleware that I wrote. That way, the only place where you need the secret and secret client ID is already on the server. So there's no need to put your client ID or client secret into a repo or into a game that somebody could decrypt and get a hold of. And then the next side of it is just pulling the data from Drupal and sending that straight back through middleware here. I know I kind of rushed over that, but are there any questions on how I did that or anything that I didn't explain clearly? Well, I didn't explain anything clearly, but anything that I could attempt to clarify for you.
So the game has like an API key, basically, that
Yeah.
it sends to the node server?
Yeah. That's the wrong one. Just make sure I'm not gonna put anything. Where the heck did I put that? All right, so it's got the API key and the secret, and the secret uses the crypto function here to create a signature that is verified on the JSON side or on the Node.js side, and then if it's verified there, then the Node.js app will communicate with Drupal and get the data, and then shoot it right back over to the whichever Godot app did it. It's more important when doing put or patch requests because you're actually altering the data in the Drupal database. It's not as important for the leaderboard where you're just trying to get the data because you can't change anything. If you're just doing a GET request, it's a little bit safer, but still you don't want to skimp on security. In addition, I did a little bit just to make sure that the score is a valid score, because cheaters exist, and that the session token is within a certain amount of time. Theoretically, to make it even more secure, you could have a rotating or a set of rotating secrets and check on the Node.js side if the secret that's there matches any of the acceptable secrets. That way, there are a lot of ways to do it. What the heck is going on here? Okay. So any other questions on that side of things? All right. Back to the game. So, like I said, we create a content type for the leaderboard entries. We have Godot securely save user data and scores to Drupal, create a view or filter order with JSON API, and pull the data into the leaderboard app to display. So there are a couple other things that we could do. Kind of touched on a few of them. If you're making an RPG, you could store loot stats, tables, NPC data. If you're doing a visual novel type, you can plan the story and dialogue through content. I think that might even be a valid use case for the book module. Not that there are many valid use cases for it, but that might be one. You can store 3D assets in Drupal. I've done it before. Not for this, but you can store assets, materials, all kinds of stuff. Again, with dialogue, instead of just doing an entire visual novel, you can have interactions and text saved there. And I kind of showed the character creator sprites changing things out. Did I just do a double jump? I did a hidden one up. But I'm not getting any blood. All right. So we already did the demos here, and there's still no boss. So, a couple concerns, pitfalls. I've talked about it a lot already. Is security. And download times depend on connection. For the game you just played, that download was slow because I was using ngrok from my local, from this Mac going over conference Wi-Fi. Sorry. Security. You need to be concerned with security when communicating between a user's device and any kind of server. There's a chance of content getting out of sync. If there's a server network or a server or network disruption, something that prevents from download, or if it only downloads halfway, something to be to consider. Also, you need to be concerned with security when communicating between a user's device and any kind of server. Make sure that there is error handling without disrupting user experience, because if the game just dies, you're going to have a bad time, and so are your players. And also, you need to be concerned with security when communicating between a user's device and any kind of server. Make sure you're not exposing your users or yourself. Godot has a crypto class for advanced cryptographic functionality. Hash and salt all the things, avoid storing private API keys in game code, and secure things in environment variables. So like with that Node.js app, it's actually running on Docker, so Docker has the .env file that I put the environment variables in through that, and then it's just calling environment variables. I can show you top to bottom that Express app and still be secure. That's the way that probably should be doing things. All right, and I was honestly too lazy to put any bosses in here. You can forgive me or not. I'm not in charge of you, but the boss ran away. All right, bonus level.
I mean, it is technically an unbeatable boss at this point.
It is? Yeah, because he runs away. Your boss is in another castle. If I haven't completely messed up, I'd like to open up for any questions about anything.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Does like Unity, have you tried integrating Drupal and Unity and all that?
I have not. It's not that I'm morally opposed to Unity, but when I started learning game dev was in September of 2023, which
They got people.
if you're familiar with that period of time, that's when Unity had the download fee fiasco and really shot themselves in the foot. And I was looking at, am I going to learn Unity? Am I going to learn Unreal? Oh, here's this open source game engine that is not going to charge me just for using it. So I'm sure that there are ways to do API calls in Unity. I just have no idea how it might be.
It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other people in the Godot community who are maybe building like an RPG where they want tons of quests and dynamic content updated every week, what backend are they using?
It really depends. Some are using just Firebase to store data. The main reason I did Drupal on this is because I was pitching it to DrupalCon. But you could use anything except WordPress. You can use any backend that you want. I've seen people even using SQLite. I think that this is maybe not the most appropriate use case for Drupal, but the fact that we can do something cool like this, going back and forth. There's also a newer Firebase alternative called Supabase, I think. They just a startup, really cool founders that I know one of them. But yeah, there are a ton of options. Anything else?
What's next as far as game design stuff?
Well, I need to put outline on that. I didn't realize the cloud was gonna go right there. We're talking about, or Hero Devs is thinking about making some more, because that Minesweeper clone that I made was for Hero Devs. We might be doing some others for events to get more people interacting with the booth, coming by to see things. I'm working on a platformer that have you heard of Jump King or played Jump King? Or heard of Vadian type games? They're basically games made to make you angry, like QWOP. The other one, big one, is getting over it, where you basically have a pitch or a pickaxe. Yes, and you're using it to jump over things, and it's really difficult and unforgiving if you fall. So Jump King is kind of the same way, but it's a platformer where you have to time holding down space to jump a certain height in a certain direction, and if you miss, then you fall pretty far down. I'm making the opposite of that, where if you're grappling downwards, and if you fall too far, then the wind blows you back up. Let me see if I can actually. It started off as a game jam submission, and this is like V0000. One of the complaints I got was it does move slow. And if you fall too far, go back to the bottom, or get blown back up to the top. So you have to time your falls. It doesn't seem too angering quite yet until you get to a section like this and miss and go all the way back up. So people liked it and hated it at the same time in the best possible way. So I'm planning on expanding this out and making it even more rage-inducing. Anything else? All right, I'm gonna press a button and then